All right, hi everyone. It's Larry Lung in the background here with your panelists. We've got Quave Burton who's the VP of Indirect Spend at Mattress Firm. She'll be our moderator and we'll introduce the rest of the panel. And take it away, Quave.
Good afternoon, everyone. Wanted to kind of tee up and kick off the industry sector breakout room number 3 for the consumer packaged goods. As Larry mentioned, my name is Quave Burton. I'm VP of Indirect Procurement at Mattress Firm. I wanted to introduce our 2 panelists, Andy Anderson and Renaud. And I'm sure I've messed, okay. I'll start with Andy. If you want to introduce yourself, a little bit about the organization you work with, your role, and then I'll move it on to Renaud.
Sure. So, hi everyone, my name is Andy Anderson. I am currently working at Mars. I've been with the organization for almost a year and a half now as a senior strategic sourcing manager. Prior to that, I spent about 18 years on the agency side, and most recently, before joining Mars, oversaw media planning and buying for Aflac. So I'm coming into the procurement side of house from that marketing and sales side, which has been a lot of fun in terms of like learning the ins and outs and all of the moving pieces that occur within the procurement side. And currently I am overseeing a number of categories that tend to focus on consumer outreach. So categories such as media, digital, a lot of what we do around e-commerce, and have been involved in a number of design opportunities. I get to have the pleasure of working across all of the segments that we have at Mars. So on an ongoing basis, get to work on our pet care brands, as well as our confections business and our food segment, and liaison with our global team members. So it's been a wonderful experience, and I'm happy to be here today.
Thank you, Andy. And Renaud?
Hi everyone, Reau. I'm French, based in the US, moved to the US 4 years ago. I have 20 years of experience in operations and procurement, 8 years at L'Oréal, the cosmetic company, French cosmetic company, in supply chain. And then I moved to Danone, the dairy French company, where I stayed for 11 years in procurement, in charge of direct, indirect, and co-manufacturing. Then I go back to school to do an executive MBA at INSEAD. And I moved to the US to join MONDELEZ, where over the last 2 years, I was head of the global media procurement director. Managing all the media spend, supporting the media VP of the business side, and I was on the procurement side, managing the investment and the tracking of the productivity and supplier relationships.
Cool, thank you. So the way we're going to handle this panel is we're going to look a little bit to the past, then we're going to come to the present, and then we're going to look to the future. So when I say looking to the past, I'm going to take everybody back, unfortunately, to March 2020, and we're going to talk about what did the impact of COVID have on your organization, either from a direction setting or shift, and then kind of the priorities that you were working on and how that flowed with you, and how that also potentially impacted your media buying and spend. So Renaud, I'll start with you. Back to March. I know it's a nightmare, but let's go back to March. How did COVID impact you?
So I would say that in terms of business, it really depends on the countries the market and globally the market organization. When we sell products in very small shops in the street, it has been a disaster. When we sell products through big retailers, it has been a good success because we have the chance at Mondelez. So Mondelez is a big food company. We have the brand Reau, the biscuits Reau. Initially it's National Biscuits. We have the brand of Milka, Lu in Europe, and we have a size of more or less $25 billion over all the countries. So really, there is not one single answer. I would say the US have performed pretty well because we sell through big retailers. So people came and bought massive volumes, which has triggered operation, supply chain complexity. So in the US, because I think that the audience is mainly US, I'm correct or not? Or do I share the global worldwide vision or more on the US?
Let's focus a little bit more on the US. We can, but if you've got, clearly you've got a global perspective, I think people would be interested in that as well. So
yes, because for instance, if we take the example of India, it has been a disaster because we sell most of the product in the street or over small corners with millions of corners. And in that case, all the distribution has been stopped. Whereas in the US, we send through big retailers with big volumes. So we have refocused the business on the main brands. We have stopped most of the innovation to refocus on the core business, what was simple to produce, simple for the operations, because we had to take into account the complexity of the global operations, including our suppliers, to make it simple, mass production on the big SKUs to avoid any complexity. In terms of media investment, we cut and then we have reinvested where we thought that the business was very valuable. So it means that we have done the media planning 100 times between March and now, changing with a lot of options. So the more complex situation for us has been the lack of visibility. And we wanted to secure the landing of the P&L. So we adapt the media investment according to the results we have month after month. And 2020 could be very different from 21. So I would say we are very close from the suppliers and the media agencies to make sure we can operate together and make sure we invest when it's the best moment on the right blend. So it's about flexibility and managing in total lack of visibility of the business.
Okay, that makes sense. So Andy, what about you? I mean, how did COVID impact your ability to support your marketing organization? Did things change? Did you have to flex up and down? I'll give you a chance to talk about that as well.
Yeah, and it's great, like, you know, listening, because a lot of those challenges we also experience, right? I think that one of the things that we were very fortunate to have is, you know, people still need to buy food for their pets. So that was a great opportunity for us to be able to continually deliver that. We had holidays where people were still buying candy. We're in one coming up in the next few days. And, you know, on our food side, with the majority of our products being in the rice and pasta area, it really allowed us to ensure that we have continue with consumer uptake. Now, what it did do from an indirect side of house and indirect investment is it caused us to really take a pause to understand, like, where are our consumers already engaging with us, continuing to engage more, quite frankly, and where do we need to place our bets to ensure that we have the proper systems in place to allow the consumers to engage in the manner that they want. So what it did do is make us really sit back and you know, Renaud, when you were talking about, you know, putting the innovation on hold, in some instances, I think, at least from the marketing side of house, what it did cause us to do is really take a step back and elevate our investment in some of the digital innovation. So we did see that occur, and it also caused us to really do some hard looking at, like, what is the cost benefit to having some of these channels that we've had in market. You know, premia. Everybody likes to get a little something with the brand, with our branding on it. You know, we've got red and yellow as our M&M's characters. People love it, but at the end of the day, do we really need to focus in that direction, or do we need to continue to make sure that we've got the right level of media investment to prompt that consumer uptake? And can we put more money towards our e-commerce opportunities to ensure that we can fulfill the supply chain that is being demanded by our consumers?
So is it fair to say that you both experienced a slight pause as, you know, everybody tried to figure out how to adjust course, and then you kind of started again, and then kind of placed your bets? Is that a fair way to describe it?
Yeah, I would say that when we say slight pause, it really truly was a slight pause, right? To make sure that you could get your feet under you. And I think that we experienced it a few times, right? Because you want to make sure that you're making your best direction with the information that you have available. But what it caused us to do is to pause again for a moment to make sure that we place the right bet and make optimizations and adjustments where needed. So it's really caused us to take a step back and make sure that we're making our dollars work as hard for us as they possibly can against our business objectives.
Yes, I would say that during the first months of the crisis, finance had the power because they wanted to secure the landing of the P&L. And when we realized that, as Andy said, we are in a food company and people still need food, and it's easy to store what we sell, we saw that in the US, the results were amazing, like never. We finally decided to reinvest more in advertising. So we invest more than the initial budget we had in February, for instance. Clearly, we pushed the e-commerce because it was a fantastic solution in China. And the whole business was saved thanks to e-commerce in China. So we learned from this experience in China and e-commerce to speed up the operations in e-commerce. And clearly, one of the big changes will be that e-commerce will be more a priority within the company than maybe it was in the past. So it's going to be about e-commerce and digital.
Yeah. So I mentioned, when we were talking a little earlier, I mentioned that from even within Mattress Firm, we shifted a bit from the brick and mortar because there was that uncertainty, you know, are the stores open? What's going on in the market? You know, how do we handle it? To really, you know, really amplifying in the digital space to be able to reach people so they can have the experience, and that kind of, you know, gets people thinking a little bit differently. How do I reach the people that are now not able to go into the store? They have to experience my product digitally. So how have you guys adapted to that shift from being able to touch it or buy it in person to that online experience that you've got to support. Renaud.
So clearly, with people spending more time at home and spending more time behind the screen, they learned how to get more information and order online, and it has clearly changed the type of interaction between the consumer and the brand because people had more time. So it clearly speed up the move from a mass communication stream to what I would call a personalization at scale. So more and more, we want to target the right consumer with the right content on the right moment, according to the availability of this consumer. So if the consumer are 5 minutes behind the screen, we want to make sure that we leverage on these 5 minutes with a valuable communication adapted for 5 minutes. If this consumer is only available for 6 seconds on YouTube, we have a total different communication. So this is really the consumer become the central point of interactions. Marketing used to say, we want to be consumer-centric, but we were not really consumer-centric because we had mass media tools. And now with the e-commerce and with the digital, and with this new experience from the consumer over the screen, clearly it's about consumer-centric, different conversations, different type of content, making sure that we address the right needs, the right questions with the right tool and the right answers.
Okay. Andy, how are you guys adapting to that shift? Is there a shift for you in Mars?
Yeah, I mean, especially, you know, like Renaud said, the following the data to make sure right message, right place, right time. But what I think it has allowed us to really do is peel back the layers of the onion. Like whenever we have providers that come to us and talk about the wealth of data that they have available, that they could make available for us to target, whereas we might explore different data providers for our different channels, what we're starting to really do is think about how the data that we want to use and can use to connect with our consumers can be connected across the consumer engagements. So rather than just taking a look at, you know, let's target this consumer as they're engaging on all recipes with Ben's Original. And then let's target, you know, our television commercials in the specific pot of content. What we're really trying to understand is like, where is our consumer and how can we continuously have data back to us that will inform like when we engage with them at the right point. The other thing that it's caused us to do is there is power in word of mouth and power in digital word of mouth. And so it has caused us to take a step back and evaluate what is the cost benefit to our like ratings and reviews opportunities. What do we need to be doing to ensure that we have the latest information, and how can we use that information to guide what message we want to send into market. So it's been a wonderful experience in terms of really starting to dive in and geek out on some of the data and that we have available to us, and it's facilitated conversations, quite frankly, across departments in a manner that might not normally see. Now we've got marketing, commercial, IT, and privacy all in one group, starting to brainstorm around like how do we continue to elevate what we're doing with our consumer outreach, be that through our creative messaging, content that we're producing for a digital environment, or just in general in how we touch our consumers in the physical retail locations.
Okay. So it's changing. What I heard is that it's changing the way we as individuals within procurement are partnering across the organization, and that we're touching and interacting and collaborating with more groups. So Renaud, are you also seeing that in the way that you guys are working at Mondelez?
Yes, definitively. Because if you have an ambition on digital, and I think you have no choice to be on digital, you have to be good on data, and you have to be able to understand the data, because this is through the understanding of the data that you will understand the consumer, the usage and habits of the consumer. And that's a massive change for the companies, because most of CPG companies, we were very good at TV, but our leaders, they are not digital native. So it is a big change in the organization. They are not, marketing directors are not necessarily data oriented. And nowadays, if you want to be good in this consumer-centric approach, you need to be good in the data. But to get the data, to be good in data, you need first to get the data. And we used to rely a lot on the media agency. So we didn't have the ownership of the data. So first, there is a fight on, I want my data because I want to understand my data, which is not so simple. I can tell you that the legal framework now with the media agencies is a massive workload, massive document with a lot about IP. Then it means also that to structure the data and to understand the data, we need to add data capabilities to get the ownership. So we need to contract with the right guys. It could be Google, it could be others, to make sure you have the data, you own the data, and the data are understandable. For instance, you need to have a taxonomy policy in place so that when you talk about a Facebook campaign, the type of brand, product, format, consumer is already with the same wording. Otherwise, it's not possible to do any consolidation and to get any insight from the data. So indeed, we used to have in TV, we used to rely very much on the media agencies because size mattered. Now, with the digital, size does not matter, data matter. You could be a very small player, and because buying media on digital is programmatic, especially in the US, all the media we buy in digital, in 90% is programmatic. So it's auction based and it's not mass negotiation. So the volume has changed, meaning that we can also decouple the TV media agency from the digital media agency. And to get access to the data, we need to build internally the right capabilities with IS, with people from market research, so that the whole organization of the company is able to treat the data, to understand the data, to get the insight, to target the right consumer with the right message at the right moment, with the right content. So we come from an history where we used to have a 30-second campaign TV that was used for all the media support. Now we move from one copy to 50 small contents, which means that at the beginning, when you brief your creative agency, if you don't have a clear plan about what will be the media planning, you never have the content or the right story or the right storytelling for the right media. So it means that it has changed totally in terms of marketing organization and the job of procurement, because we have now around the table the people from creative, the people from media, the people from IS for the data, the people from market research, and the job of procurement clearly shifting from I manage a SRM, supplier relationship management with my supplier, to I manage a bunch of suppliers, I manage an ecosystem. So how can I make sure that all these guys, who are sometimes competitors, how do they work together for the benefit of your company? It's not so easy in terms of remuneration, incentive, transparency, because somewhere the media agencies, they compete with Facebook and Google. But Google also compete with the creative agencies, and the media agencies, they also compete with the creative agency. Sometimes the media drive the storytelling of the creative. So it's a total different environment, which is more how to manage an ecosystem instead of how to manage different suppliers.
So Andy, I see you nodding your head. Are you also experiencing that collaboration challenge and kind of navigating that new dynamic?
Yeah, and the way that you put that, Renaud, is managing the ecosystem is exactly how I've been trying to figure out how to state, you know, the environment that we're currently in. So thank you for that. I'm gonna take that away and make sure that I use that. The other thing that I would say is it's even evolved the way that we work with our agency. And I think that this is one of the benefits to me actually coming into procurement from being in marketing and on, you know, working with agencies, is I understand and I can see that territorial push. What I will say is that the environment that we're in right now, I've seen a little good come from it. We can now have conversations with our agency and figure out, you know, is it best to have you know, a Mars specific type of contract where you know, our agency will operationalize against that, or are there benefits to, you know, using the agency contract with partners? And by having those types of conversations, it's really taken down some of the walls around who owns the contract, and has allowed us to really understand, like, well, what's the benefit to having the contractual ownership, which oftentimes will come down to like some benefits that you get through having the ability to pipe data in directions, the ability to consolidate data, the ability to ingest into different systems that can then be used to inform the planning. So absolutely have some of the same challenges, but some of the same like benefits of managing that entire ecosystem. But at the same time, it's opened that ecosystem up to also include those external our external parties and bring us closer, quite frankly, to our buying and planning teams with the agencies.
So now that we're collaborating across organizations, across companies, and within the company across different departments that hadn't been sharing and talking and working collaboratively together, are there new tools or technologies or platforms that you see emerging that have helped facilitate those conversations, or how are you guys handling that?
Would you like me to go first? I can.
Whoever wants to answer that one. Do you have a thought, or do you want me to hand that over to Renaud and let him
Renaud
start that
looks
one
like he's
off?
got one, and then I'll
Okay,
Okay.
perfect.
So
Renaud?
I would say the first step that we have been engaged in was, before talking about tools, we've tried to streamline the portfolio of agencies to make it more simple and to leverage on partnerships. So what we did, for instance, is that after having done a worldwide media pitch, we've done a worldwide creative agency pitch, and we have aligned the creative agencies on the same media holding company. So we work in media with two big groups, Publicis and WPP. When we work for the media and the media piece with WPP, we work with a creative agency of WPP. When we work with Publicis in the same country, we work with a creative agency from Publicis, because we believe that before leveraging on any kind of tools, we need to leverage on the holding companies and make sure we create a team that have somewhere the same interest to give us access to the right talent within the big holding company. So tools will be the next step, and to build the tools, Mondelez has run a worldwide pitch on production cost and with production houses, because this becomes really a bottleneck in the campaign communication, because if you don't, how do you produce within the same budget? How do you move from one TV copy to 50 different contents? It's the big challenge in terms of finance, time to market, technology, because you have plenty of different media, so different format, different support, different quality, different technology. So we believe that we need also to embark the production houses to define an integrated tool solution. But we've decided to work first on the players in the chain to review with them the total value chain of communication. We started from the media agencies, then the creative agencies, and now the production houses. And we plan to add the right model to make sure we have the right flexibility, speed, communication from one country to another one format to another one, to copy paste as we want, to manage the right, to manage the music, all integrated tool. But yes, it's going to be one of pillars of the solution once we have all the players in place, and we are still in putting the player in place.
Okay. Andy, thank you, Renaud. Andy, do you have a perspective on kind of how you guys are handling that as well?
Yeah, so I would say that really one of the things that I've witnessed is we're taking the time to get our own house in order, in ensuring that we have the tools, let me back up, the processes, the tools, and the tech to be able to facilitate that connectedness. We have rolled out a number of tools across our organization that have allowed us to track, our projects, keep status of where we're currently at, and do the standard, like, here's how much we're spending and here's how much we're saving. But what I've witnessed is that the tools that have been stood up are now being used cross-department. It's no longer just a procurement, a tool that's housed in procurement. And any conversation that we've had with our stakeholders is that when we review these projects, it's not a procurement decision that we're looking for. This is a business decision. So on an ongoing basis, what we have done, and this started, we rolled it out in Q4 of last year. We've used a system to help us with our annual operations planning, which has been greatly beneficial when we go to our stakeholders, whether they be finance or marketing or salespeople, to all get into the system in real time, have a conversation about, are we aligned to the project? Are we in agreement that these are the types of savings that we're looking to deliver, and have they been captured from a operations plan perspective? And the beauty of doing that is now that we don't have one system for our pet segment, one system for confections, and one for food. We're all using the same system. We're all pulling reports from the same system, and it's been rolled out globally. So I think that the next step is definitely ensuring that we can have more of an external collaboration platform. But by having these types of platforms, quite frankly, rolled out internally, has helped us start to feel better in having conversations around the utilization of them. The other thing that I will say is that during this particular period, it has reinforced the need for having properly upkept digital asset management tools in place, and ensuring that when we have those, that again, it's not siloed, and it can be pushed within a global footprint. And so doing simple things like that in establishing structure has really allowed us to create a process that we all feel like we've been involved with designing to help facilitate this externally in the future.
Okay, thank you. So one of the things I heard in the impact of the emerging collaboration requirement and kind of reaching across the different organizations to be more effective and more planful is really around having the right resources at the right time. I've only heard in the 30 minutes or so that we've been talking, we haven't talked what most people think of procurement. They think, oh, it's all about saving money, but we haven't really talked about all about saving money, because I don't think that's purely the focus of what procurement does. I think it's about improving service and access and support, defining what you need, and making sure that you're doing it at the right cost. But it's not just about taking cost out. So Renaud, what do you think about that?
Yes, I totally agree. And the job is I would say, much more a business partner job, where we partner with plenty of other functions internally and externally. But when you talk to the finance guys, they still expect you to deliver savings. And yes, one of the complexity I have is that on digital, all the models we have, for me, are RBS, because comparing the CPM of Facebook 2019 with 2020 does not make sense. Does not make sense. So we used to have a mass media model based on TV, and the GRP was a concept that was easily understandable for all the community, the marketing VP, the finance VP, and it was easy to compare cost per GRP. Okay, they forgot the reach, but it was still manageable. But when it's about CPM bought through auction programmatically, it doesn't make sense absolutely. So we are under pressure to deliver a drop in CPM, whereas the strategy is to make sure we target the right consumer at the right time. So it's about moving from productivity to ROI. But it changed totally the framework of finance, and finance is not necessarily ready for that. It's so easy to appear as a good buyer delivering a huge amount of productivity because you decrease the CPM, yes, but you impact negatively the quality of your communication, and it's totally counterproductive. So we don't have, if we talk about finance, we don't have the right model to really capture the benefits of having a good procurement policy. And they may have a trend to see that costs increase, whereas yes, increase, but we save so much money because we have so less waste in terms of media communication that it works. It works because I target the right guys at the right moment. So I have a much better ROI. But if you don't have any ROI as a standard methodology, and it's difficult to put this standard methodology in place, you don't have the right KPI for the project. You see, so that's one of the bottleneck, I would say, of the process. How do you measure the performance in procurement?
So we've talked about kind of the initial impact of COVID and how that shifted how we were looking at things. We really needed to make sure we were flexible, and in that flexibility, e-commerce really emerged as an area of focus. Digital emerged as another area of focus, and that also brought the need for data and data ownership and rights like that, as well as understanding now that we're collaborating. It's not just one organization, it's an ecosystem. You may want to trademark your thoughts on that one, Renaud, but it's now an ecosystem of how we're working together and collaborating. And along those lines, it's also how do we reach the right individual at the right time with the right message. So I think that's what we've really, been able to kind of talk about from where we were, where we are, and kind of driving towards the future. It really is around how does procurement support that, targeting the right message for the right person at the right time. I want to open it up for a few minutes for questions if there are any. I don't see anything at the little bottom thing, but there may be some. Nope, no questions. I want to also give you each like a minute or so to maybe summarize or share maybe some other helpful words of wisdom. And I'll start with you, Andy.
Yeah, on the piece about, how do we illustrate the value of like what procurement is doing, right? I'm very fortunate to have leadership, behind our team that continually stresses that yes, we're going to deliver your savings. That's our job. But we really want to look holistically at like what is the value that's being created by our procurement team or commercial teams being involved. So we do have that support. And one of the things that I will say that we use as evidence or proof point is that we're now being involved in strategic business conversations. So before, like when the brands are doing their planning, they're bringing in procurement and asking us, what do you think about this? What's the market doing? So rather than waiting until the last minute and going through negotiations and saying, here's what we got you, they're bringing us in on the forefront, and that excites us because it does mean that they do see value in what we do as a team.
Cool, thank you.
Yes.
Renaud, do you want to share?
I would say that Mars is specific in the sense that this is a family-owned company. So you have less the pressure on the value of the stock, and they usually think more on the long-term business. And this is where the concept of value is very important for them. Whereas sometimes we may have some finance director that are more about show me the money for tomorrow morning. So yes, it's good. You are in a very comfortable, I would say, suitable environment. No, what I will add is if some people were a bit digital skeptic, I think that and even some consumer never thought they will one day order on Amazon. I think that over the last month, most of us have experienced online order, and it works well. And you have access to a lot of promotions, product information. You have more time. Sometimes it's even cheaper. So I think that definitively it has changed the mindset over digital e-commerce. It doesn't mean that retailers' business is dead, but it means that both will be more balanced, and that clearly, in my opinion, digital, not only as media digital, but digital as a new business model is fundamental for the companies to be understood. And for procurement, the main transformation I see that I have experienced is that the procurement in charge of IT, procurement in charge of media, procurement in charge of creatives were three different guys. And more, when you're in charge of marketing and sales procurement, you need to have the right capabilities to be engaged in conversation with all of them, because we cannot differentiate anymore the media from the content and from the IT behind to get the data. So the job of procurement clearly is changing. It becomes more complex, more complicated. That will require more polyvalent guys, more strength in collaborations and partnering internally, externally, with certainly more mature procurement person, I would say.
Cool. Thank you. So I'm going to turn it back over to Larry to ride us on out as we wrap this up. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.